So it says, باب المسح على العمامة والخمار, wiping over the turban and the headscarf. So again, Imam Malik is answering questions because they are asked, because they are debated. And so the position of the majority of the ulama is that you can wipe on socks that fulfill the conditions, as we mentioned. And for the Maliki, specifically leather socks, right? That's specifically what it is. Okay. But you can't wipe on anything else. Okay. You can't wipe on, for example, a turban and not wipe your head, or wipe on a hijab or something like that. You can't do that. So Imam Malik is answering that question that is around, and this is the answer that Imam Malik gives, and Imam Shafi'i gives, and Imam Abu Hanifa gives others. You can't do that. So he says, أخبرنا مالك قال بلغني عن جابر بن عبد الله أنه سئل عن الإمامة فقال لا حتى يمس الشعر الماء. Right? So he says, can you just wipe over your imama, your turban? And he said, no, that doesn't count. You have to make sure that the water touches the hair, right? And so for Imam Malik, A, it is a condition that the water touches the hair, and B, that it touches all of the hair, right? And so it is not enough that you, for example, even tilt the turban back or tilt your hijab back or something like that. You have to take the whole thing off and make sure you wipe the whole head, right? Even such extent for the Malikis that you have to wipe the whole hair, right? And so you're going to have to grab if you have long hair, you're going to have to grab the whole thing and wipe that whole thing, right? Um, that is the Maliki school. Now, I'll quote some of the things here and then we'll see other evidence contrary to this. So he says, and then he says, وقال محمد بهذا نأخذ وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. Same story, you have to do that. He said, أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافعا قال رأيت صفية بنت أبي عبيد إن تتوضأ وتنزع خمارها. She took her khimar off ثم تمسح برأسها, wiped her whole head. قال نافع وأنا يومئذ صغير, and I was young at that age, right? That's why I saw her hair, right? So Malik informed us from Nafi' that he said, I saw Safiya bint Abi Ubaid doing wudu. She pulled off her headscarf, then wiped her head. Nafi' said, and I was a young boy at that time, right? قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ لا يمسح على الخمار ولا العمارة بلغنا أن المسح على العمارة كان فترك. Very interesting, super important. We see a lot of this with Imam Muhammad. He said, Muhammad said, we hold this. You cannot wipe over a khimar, nor can you wipe over imama. It has reached us, it has been reached us that wiping over the turban was practiced. It existed. Yes, there might be a hadith to indicate that, but then it was abandoned. Super important. So you might find a hadith that says this. You say, well, there we go. The hadith says this. Okay, but was that the final thing that the Prophet did? Or was that something that existed perhaps early on and then was abrogated? Okay, so you're going to find a hadith that proves something. You say, yeah, it proves it, but that's abrogated. We don't do that. It has been narrated to us that wiping of the turban was practiced and then abandoned. This is the verdict of Abu Hanifa and our fuqaha in general. The Kufans in general, they say this whole thing. Now, where's the discussion? Okay, where's the discussion? The discussion is that the Prophet ﷺ, it's in Sahih Bukhari or Muslim or both, that the Prophet ﷺ wiped on, that he was wearing a turban and he tilted it back. Okay, he tilted it back and wiped on a part of his head and then wiped over the rest of the turban. Okay, so let's repeat. The Prophet ﷺ is making wudu. He has a turban on. He tilts it back, wipes on a part of his head, and then wipes over the rest of the turban. So for the Shafi'is, this is very, very simple. What it means is that the default, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and wipe your head, that means wipe your whole head. However, when the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated that he only wiped a part of his head, that tells us you only have to wipe a part of the head. Easy, very simple answer. Okay? You have to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wipe your head, which means the whole of your head, like wash your face, which means the whole of your face. The Prophet ﷺ comes along, demonstrates that he only wiped a part of his head. Therefore, you only have to wipe part of the head. Super easy. Okay. For the Hanafis, it's a similar answer, but slightly different. They say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wipe with your head, i.e., wipe your hand with your head. That's a verse of the Quran. Wamsahu bi ru'usikum. Wipe your hands with your head, i.e., wipe your head with your hands. The Prophet ﷺ is pushing back his turban and exposing how much of his head? About a quarter, about a handspan. So the Hanafis say it is fard to do a handspan of your head. You can't just have a speck, as a Shafis would say. You have to do about a handspan or a quarter of your head. Okay? That's what the Prophet is doing, is exposing about a quarter of his head so that you fulfill the fard, you fulfill the bare minimum of wiping. Right? So the Hanafi and Shafi thing is close, right? Now, let's look at the Hanbali approach. The Hanbali approach is what? What did the Prophet actually do? He wiped his head and then he wiped the rest of his turban. So the Hanbalis are Hanbali said this tells us that the hair of the head and the skin of the head and the turban on the head are all one limb. So he's wiping his hair, which counts as wiping the skin of the head. And then he's wiping over the rest of his head. So he did not merely wipe part of his head. Rather, the turban counts as his head, and so he wiped over all of it. So the Hanbalis say you have to wipe the whole of the head. But if you have a hat on, or a khimar on, or a hijab on, or a turban on, you can just wipe over that because the thing on your head counts as your head. Can you see that? So that's very subtle. So they're keeping to the default, which is you have to wipe the whole of the head, like you have to wipe the whole, wash the whole of your arm, the whole of your face, the whole of your feet, same thing. But they're saying when the Prophet ﷺ is tilting back the turban and wiping over some of the head and then wiping over the rest of the turban, he is showing us that the turban is part of his head. And so therefore the khimar or the hijab is part of the head. So for the Hanbalis, if you didn't wipe any of the hair and you just wiped over your hat or your turban or your khimar or your hijab, it's fine. But unlike the Shafi'is and unlike the Hanafis, you can't just get away with wiping a quarter or some. You have to do the whole. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's that.
Right? Very interesting. Now, here's the problem. So now the Shafi'is are going to come along and say, good point, guys. We respect and we value the Hanafi approach. So therefore, we're going to say, don't just do a speck. And we respect and we value the Hanbali approach because basically we're explaining the same hadith in 3 different ways. And they're all pretty valid. Now, the Shafi'is are going to come along and say, we do not agree with the Maliki approach at all. Why? Because the Malikis say, no, you have to take off your whole hijab. What's your evidence? Well, Jabir said this, right? Jabir said, where is it? Jabir radiallahu anhu, Sahabi, he said, you have to wipe the whole thing. Okay? And then the Malikis will say, it's not just Jabir, and Jabir is one of the muftis of Medina as well. Not a major mufti of Medina, but he was there of the Sahaba. But this is the way of Medina. The way of Medina is you take your turban off totally. You take it all off. You take your khimar off totally, right? He's quoting Safiya bint Abi Ubaid, the same kind of thing, right? So Imam Shafi is saying, hang on a minute. Who is a prophet and who is not a prophet? Is Jabir a prophet? Is he receiving revelation? Is Safiya receiving revelation? Or are the scholars of Medina receiving revelation? No, they're not receiving revelation. There's only one person who's receiving revelation here, which is the Prophet ﷺ. So for the Shafi'is, what they're going to say is, we hold that you only have to do a speck of the skin of your head and a speck of the hair. That's all. That's how we understood the hadith. However, it will be makruh for you not to take into consideration the Shafi'i, the Hanafi understanding of that hadith or the Hanbali understanding of hadith, because you're doing the same thing that we're doing. You're working the same paradigm. But we do not respect the Maliki answer. I mean, obviously, on a greater picture, they respect it as scholarship. But as an internal structure, the Shafis would say, this is unconstitutional. This is wrong. There is a Sahih hadith that the Prophet ﷺ did not wipe the whole of his head. Okay? You can't come along and say, well, a Sahabi said otherwise. That doesn't mean anything. You can't do that. Or in Medina, they don't do that. So this is one of these key points of contention between Imam Shafi and his teacher Imam Malik, is that you cannot just go with what they do in Medina over a hadith. For Imam Malik, you have to go with what they do over in Medina over a hadith, because that's a better preservation of the sunnah than the hadith is. Right? So this is an interesting thing there. So in the Shafis, you see that internal, how are they going to work with others? They're going to say, oh yeah, make sure you wipe over the whole turban. Make sure you wipe a bit of your head and wipe over the rest of hijab. Because you know the Hanafis or the Hanbalis, they're saying this, or the Hanafis are saying that. But Malikis, just ignore them. Why? Because what they're saying does not fit our paradigm at all. It's just unconstitutional. Right? We don't say that. Right? Now, obviously, does Imam Shafi respect and revere what Imam Malik is saying, of course, in the general sense. But as an internal thing, it's like, no, that's just wrong. You're just wrong. Right? We just ignore that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So we should try and be as careful as possible. Make sure you at least do a quarter of your head. You're wearing a hijab, put your hand inside, right? Wipe a part, half, whole quarter of your head. If you're Maliki, let's take your hijab off and that's it. Right. Now here's the problem. In the Maliki school, can you take off your hijab off in front of a non-Muslim female? I don't know. So I'm Maliki female. I'm making wudu in a public bathroom, and there's non-Muslim females there. Can I do that? Can I take my hijab off? I don't know in the Maliki school. I'm not sure. Right. Whereas in the Shafi school, you can. Right. So now in the Shafi school, I don't have to take my hijab off. I can just put my hand inside, or it could even drip through my hijab. Right. As long as the water gets there somehow, it's fine. And in the Shafi school, yes, you can take your hijab off in front of a non-Muslim woman. Right. You can't expose more than that. You can't, for example, expose your breast, for example, if you're breastfeeding. Can a in the Shafi school, could a woman breastfeed, for example, in front of a non-Muslim woman? No, you can't. Or in front of a irreligious woman, for example, that you don't trust, for example, a Muslim woman who you don't trust. But you could expose your hair, right? So I don't know, in the Maliki school, can you do that or not? But in the Maliki school, certainly you're gonna have to take off everything. You're gonna make sure, because you're gonna have to get the whole thing, right? Get all the way to the back of it. The whole thing is considered rats. The whole thing is considered head. The scalp plus the hair is all considered head. That all has to be done. Exactly. So Hanafis also can't do that. So it's difficult in the Hanafi school. Okay, next topic, it says باب الاغتسال من الجنابة. Ghusl because of sexual intercourse or ejaculation. So he says أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع أن ابن عمر. Remember, this is our golden chain. Let's zoom in a little bit more. كان إذا اغتسل من الجنابة. Notice how he starts the topic with that. There's not even a single hadith here. Right? He's just quoting Ibn Umar. He's not quoting the Prophet ﷺ. Right? So it's interesting that he's doing that, right? So he's saying basically the Sunnah is understood in Medina, and if I can quote a key inheritor of fiqh, that's sufficient for me. I don't need to quote a hadith, right? Whereas if you look at the 6 books which are going to come, the 6 books, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, they're all the grand students of Imam Malik, right? They're studying with, and they are all Shafi'i or Shafi'i-esque, if that makes any sense. And so therefore they're basically only going to be quoting the Prophet ﷺ. Right? It's a different methodology totally. إمام مالك narrates حدثنا نافع أن ابن عمر كان إذا اغتسل من الجنابة أفرغ على يده اليمنى فغسلها ثم غسل فرجه ومضمض واستنشق وغسل وجهه ونضح في عينيه ثم غسل يده اليمنى ثم اليسرى ثم غسل رأسه ثم اغتسل وأفاض الماء على جلده. Malik informed us that Nafi narrated to us that Ibn Umar did ghusl after sexual intercourse or ejaculation. It just says janaba, that's one thing. He would pour water onto his right hand and wash it, then wash his private parts, then rinse his mouth, blow water into his nose, wash his face and sprinkle water into his eyes, he would then wash his right arm, then his left arm, and then wash his head, and then wash himself all over, pouring the water over his skin. قال محمد وبهذا كله نأخذ إلا النضح في العينين فإن ذلك ليس بواجب. You do not have to clean your eyes, right? You don't have to clean your eyes, right? So as long as your eyelids are washed, you have to like clean inside your eyes. فإن ذلك ليس بواجب على الناس في الجنابة وهو قول أبي حنيفة ومالك بن أنس وعامة. He says in reality that's also Imam Malik said you don't have to do that either. So you don't have to wash the inside of your eye. So if you stood underwater and you washed the inside of your mouth and the inside of your nose, and you didn't wash the inside of your eyes, that's totally fine, right? Now, one thing it doesn't mention here, right? So again, this is this difference between studying fiqh from something like this and studying fiqh from a fiqh book is totally different, right? So here, if I'm studying fiqh from this is not fiqh. This is just narrations. This is narrations plus general ideas. But there are other key super important things are not mentioned here, right? And I'll give you an example. Like here we just saw how to make ghusl, and there is a fundamental thing here that's not mentioned, right? And I'm going to try and show it to you right now. Just give me a second. One little thing I just wanted to. So Malik, rahimahullah, he left behind him students. He left behind him a hadith. So people are quoting hadith left, right, and center. But he also left behind him the Mudawwan al-Kubra, among other works, which are questions put to the student, one of his students, Ibn Qasim, who spent 20 years with him, studying fiqh with him. And so what I'm trying to show here is there's a big difference between studying fiqh and getting quotes. Fiqh is not a series of quotes. I'm gonna find this issue. Um, okay. I'm gonna find this quote here 1 second. I'm just trying to find this quote from that original source in Mudawwana of Imam Malik. Dalk. My apologies, I was taking some while, but I want to try and find this thing. This is the important learning opportunity. Sure, I'll try and find it another time. That's fine. So anyway, so one thing I wanted to mention here was the whole issue of dalk. So for Imam Malik, it is when you're making ghusl or making wudu, it is essential that you pass your hand over your body. So you can't just stand under the water. Okay, you have to pass your hand over your body and actually wash your body as opposed to just have water run over your body, right? So you study this book, so what it doesn't say it here, so that's not how you study fiqh. So Imam Malik, somebody studied the Muwatta of Imam Malik with him, I think in a week or a weekend. So Imam Malik smiled, he said, a book that I've been composing for 20 years or 50 years, I can't remember what he said. You study it in a weekend, meaning you've got the narration, but there's lots more details here. There's lots more things happening behind the scenes, right? And so when you study fiqh with somebody, it's like, what about this? What about, and there's all these systems, all these principles, all these other things that are not mentioned here because it's just a short work, particularly because here we're looking at Imam Malik's Muwatta through the lens of somebody else anyway, right? So, it's not even there. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Go ahead with a question.
Yeah, you were saying that there's something that is not mentioned in that called ghusl. Like you're saying that there was something that was supposed to be in ghusl, but it isn't here.
Yeah, exactly. So you think, oh, I've read the book. I'm Maliki. I read the
Yeah.
Muwatta from Imam Malik. That's not fiqh. That's not how you study fiqh. Right? So there's a difference
What
between
was
so the issue was of delk. The issue with delk is that you have to pass your hand over your body when you're
Oh,
making.
okay.
Right, that was the issue. What I'm trying to say is
Oh,
somebody thinks, for example, that if they study fiqh by studying hadith, that's two different things. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of fiqh, but that's not the same thing. It's like somebody said, I read the Quran. Okay, does that make them have good tajweed? Right? That's two different things totally. Like I read the whole Quran. Like I'm an Arab, I read the whole Quran. It's interesting. Okay, have you studied tajweed? He's like, no. Oh, that's something different. Right? Tajweed is a different science to just reading the Quran. Right? It's like fiqh, for example, the systems behind it, the rules behind the rules. You get that from a fiqh book, right? And through studying fiqh. So, what was Ibn Qasim doing with Imam Malik for 20 years if this is the whole book? We can read this whole book in 20 years. Why not? It doesn't take 20 years to read this whole book, does it? So what was he doing with him for 20 years? He's discussing issues. What's this? What about this? What about this? It's called talaqqi, right? Learning fiqh, right? Which is very different to narrating hadiths from that you can help you derive fiqh. It's not the same thing, right? So when we study fiqh in a fiqh book with a scholar fiqh. For example, I just came from another class before between Matan Abu Shuja' in Shafi fiqh, right? This is a fiqh book, right? Totally different to studying hadith. Hadith is narration, right? A totally different thing. So here we're getting ideas about fiqh, we're learning about fiqh, but we're not studying fiqh. It's not the same thing. Okay. So he says concerning a man who has sexual intercourse or experiences ejaculation at night. It says أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا عبد الله بن دينار. So we mentioned before he's one of the key narrators from Ibn Umar. عن ابن عمر أن عمر رضي الله عنه ذكر لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه تصيبه الجنابة من الليل فقال توضأ واغسل ذكرك ونم. So Imam Malik narrated that Abdullah ibn Dinar informed us that Ibn Umar said that Umar mentioned to Prophet ﷺ that he had sexual intercourse or experienced ejaculation at night. He said, make wudu, wash your private parts, and then sleep. So the Shafi'is, they say, it is sunnah to do this and makruh not to do this. So to going to sleep while in janaba is something makruh. And it comes in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, I'm scared that Sayyidina Jibreel will not attend my death if I die in janaba, right? And there's a hadith, some of them are weak, some of them sahih, about angels not entering a house in which there is a junub, somebody who's in janaba, or somebody who is ha'id, menstruating, meaning she's finished her menstruation, but she can't be bothered to make ghusl. Let's say she finished her period 7 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so she hasn't prayed Fajr. And then she says, I'll pray Dhuhr about 4 o'clock. So she spends from 7 a.m. in the morning at home till 4 o'clock. She's going to be in Janaba. That's not a good thing to do. So being in Janaba is as soon as, ideally, all things being equal, right? Obviously, life can get complex and there's different things happen in life, but all things being equal, as soon as you need to make ghusl, you make ghusl, right? That's what you should do. And you shouldn't sleep or eat in a situation like that. Okay. قال محمد وإن لم إن لم يوضأ ولم يغسل ذكره حتى ينام فلا بأس بذلك, right? So what if you didn't do any of those things? It's fine. Again, providing you're not going to make anything najas, right? So there's a discussion: is sperm itself, for example, is it filthy or not? So the Shafi say it's not. So it's not filthy in itself. It's just disgusting. So disgusting and filthy are not the same thing. And so if you didn't make ghusl, you just went to sleep and woke up whenever you want to wake up, then it's not haram, but it's not sunnah. The sunnah is if you want to sleep and you don't want to make ghusl, then you should go and make wudu, wash your private parts and make wudu, and then make ghusl later on. Right. قال محمد, so now he's going to quote his source. أخبرنا أبو حنيفة أبو حنيفة عن أبي إسحاق السبيعي, so these are all Kufans. عن الأسود ibn Yazid, so this is the Kufan access. There's the different sources to Aisha radiallahu anha. One of them is through Al-Aswad ibn Yazid, right? So when you see Al-Aswad ibn Yazid and Aisha, that's a Kufan hadith, even though Aisha is in Medina, right? But it's a Kufan hadith. These are all Kufans. رضي الله عنها قالت كان الرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصيب من أهله ثم ينام ولا يمس ماء فإن استيقظ من آخر الليل عاد واغتسل. Right. So he said, Muhammad said, Abu Hanifa reformed to us from Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, from Al-Aswad, from Al-Aisha. She said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make love to min ahlihi, to one of his wives, to some of his wives, you could say. Then sleep without touching water. Then if he awoke towards the end of the night, he would return to his wife, I have intercourse again, and then do ghusl. Right? So therefore it's not obligatory. قال محمد هذا الحديث أرفق بالناس وهو قول أبي حنيفة. He said this hadith is more lenient, right? There's lots of things that Imam Muhammad says. Leniency. What is the last of the two things? Perhaps there is a hadith that says otherwise, right? But one is more lenient, right? So if you have to understand that if you ever go camping, right? You go camping, you don't have water. It's very difficult to make ghusl. You do not have taps to just turn on. You do not have so making ghusl is pretty hard in the past. It was a mission, right? It's a huge mission. Imagine if it was cold, right? So imagine making ghusl twice, and like you're gonna get sick. You're gonna get sick. You're gonna be a situation where it's like this is really, really difficult. It might be a situation where you're gonna have to make tayammum and make wudu only when the sun comes up because it's cold. You don't have heating. So this making life easier for people it's a real important thing. Right? So this is the verdict of Imam Hanifa. May Allah show mercy upon him. Right. So again, is that the Hanafi school? The details in the Hanafi school. Go and study Hanafi fiqh. Again, it's very different studying Hanafi fiqh versus seeing a quote from Imam Muhammad here. Doing ghusl on Jum'ah. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع عن ابن عمر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا أتى أحدكم الجمعة فليغتسل. Malik informed us from Nafi' from Ibn Umar, the Prophet ﷺ said, when any of you come to Jum'ah, let him make ghusl. That's an obligation by default. When the Prophet ﷺ, when Allah sends you a prophet, and that prophet says, let so-and-so do such and such, or do such and such, that means it's obligatory by default. So the outward purport of this hadith is that ghusl on Jum'ah is obligatory. That's the outward purport. Right? That's what you'd assume if you read that hadith without any other evidence. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا صفوان بن سليم عن عطاء بن يسار عن أبي سعيد الخدري أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. Malik informed us that Safwan ibn Sulaim narrated to us from Ata ibn Yasar from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, doing ghusl on Jummah is incumbent upon every Muslim who has reached puberty. Well, incumbent sounds like what? Sounds like wajib. What's the word in Arabic? Wajib. That means you have to do it, correct? So that's two Sahih hadiths that it is wajib, obligatory to make ghusl on Jumu'ah. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا زهري عن ابن السباق أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال يا معشر المسلمين هذا يوم جعله الله عيدا للمسلمين فاغتسلوا ومن كان عنده طيب فلا يضره أن يمس منه وعليكم بالسواك. Malik informed us saying that the Zuhri narrated to us from Ibn al-Sabbaq that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, O community of Muslims, this is a day which Allah has made a festival for Muslims, so do ghusl. And whoever has some scent, some perfume, it will not harm him to put it on. And don't neglect to use a toothstick, the siwak. Right, again. فَاغْتَسِلُوا, command. Again, a messenger of Allah comes to you and says, فَاغْتَسِلُوا. That means Allah is telling you, فَاغْتَسِلُوا. That means make ghusl. أخبرنا مالك أخبرني أبو سعيد المقبوري عن أبي هريرة, and I believe there's a gap in the chain here. أنه قال غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم كغسل الجنابة. So Malik informed us that Al-Maqburi informed me that Abu Sa'id said, that Abu Hurairah said, doing ghusl on Jummah is incumbent upon every Muslim who has reached puberty, just like ghusl is due to sexual intercourse. Right? Same thing. You have to do it. وأخبرنا مالك أخبرني نافع أن ابن عمر كان لا يروح إلى الجمعة إلا اغتسل. Malik informed us that Nafi informed me that Ibn Umar would only go to Jummah after making ghusl. أخبرنا مالك أخبرني زهري عن سالم بن عبد الله عن أبيه أن رجلا من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دخل مسجد يوم الجمعة وعمر الخطاب يخطب الناس فقال أية ساعة هذه؟ قال الرجل انقلبت من السوق فسمعت النداء فما زدت على أن توضأت ثم أقبلت. وقال عمر الوضوء أيضا وقد علمت أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يأمر بالغسل. So Malik informed us that Zuhri said that Salim ibn Abdullah from his father that a man from the companions of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ entered the masjid on the day of Jum'ah while Umar ibn Khattab was giving the khutbah. And he asked, "What time is this? i.e., why are you late?" The man answered, "I was coming back from the marketplace. That's why I was late. And I heard the call. So as soon as I came, I had done wudu, I came." So, and Umar said, "And wudu too, i.e., you just made wudu and that's it." So number one, you're late, and number two, you haven't done wudu, even though not really when you know that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to order people to do ghusl. What are you doing? You have to make ghusl. قال محمد الغسل أفضل يوم الجمعة وليس بواجب وفي هذه آثار كثيرة. Imam Muhammad said, it is better to do ghusl on the day of Jum'ah. It is not obligatory, and concerning this there are many reports. Very, very important process. I just read, what, 4 Sahih hadiths? 1, 2, 3 Sahih hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to make wudu, to make ghusl on Jum'ah. So that would mean it's obligatory. Khalas, end of story. And then I see that Ibn Umar would only come if he made ghusl, and Sayyidina Umar told somebody off for not making ghusl. So it must be obligatory, surely. Then you find, subhanAllah, it is not. And this is not just the Hanbali school, Maliki school, or just the Hanbali school, or just the Shafi school, or just the Hanafi school. They all say that. In fact, very, very few people historically have ever said it's obligatory to make a ghusl. So don't be fooled by the outward purport, the outward meaning of a verse of the Quran or a hadith. Right? Don't be fooled. If you want to find the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, dig and then dig and then dig some more and then dig some more and then keep digging. And you've been studying full time, day in and day out for 50, 60 years, then come and tell me what you think. But before you do that, don't talk. Don't say, "Oh, but it's wajib. I saw a hadith." "Oh, but you can't do that. I read a verse of the Quran." Have you read the explanation of that? Have you seen the other verses of the Quran? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? There's so many things that might be lost on you. I'll give you another example just in the Quran. Shaitan. Was he an angel or was he jinn?
Jinn.
Is that maybe or definitely?
Definitely.
What do you think, Sayyid?
Definitely.
Definitely. Okay. Any verse in the Quran that you've heard mentions that? Surah Al-Kahf.
No.
I want to give Google now. Ask Sheikh Google. Say Satan, Islam, angel, jinn, Surah Al-Kahf. Right, Google it. Sister Kalini as well. Angel, Satan, Islam, angel, jinn, Jinn, Surat Al-Kahf.
Yeah, I don't know.
You found it? What does it say? What does Sheikh Google say? Rahimahullah.
We said to the angels about
Muhammad, your voice is not very clear.
We said to the angel, bow down to him. We bow down to
Can you type Muhammad, because I can't really hear you. You just maybe just type or put paste.
Yeah, it says kana minal jinn, the
كان
words.
من الجن ففسق عن أمر ربه. Right? He was of the jinn. You want it any more clear than that? Every single Friday, inshallah ta'ala, we're reciting this Surah Al-Kahf. كان من الجن ففسق عن أمر ربه. He was of the jinn. He was of the jinn. He was of the... What do you want more than that? Right? So I come along and say, no, 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 he was a fallen angel. And you say, Fareed, with all due respect, you're a kafir. Get out of you're not a Muslim. Because Allah says one thing and you say something else. And I say, oh, but did you know that sometimes we refer to angels as jinn? Whoops. So you thought the word jinn only meant jinn. But actually, jinn is from the word al-ijtinan, the hidden ones. Right? The hidden ones. And are angels hidden as well? Yes. So we can also in Arabic refer to angels as jinn. So obviously we all know that that's wrong. Or you know that he was a jinn. But what I'm trying to say is how categorical and how quick we are to think that it's only one way. The hadith says this is one way, you're wrong. The ayah says this, you're wrong. Kafir, you're wrong. So, well, hang on a minute. Have you studied Arabic language? Did you know that, for example, actually you could actually look at another way? And there are certain scholars that said he was a fallen angel. Yes, that's wrong. Yes, they made a mistake. But it's not that simple in that they are totally wrong and that they're crazy and because the word jinn in Arabic can be used for an angel as well. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. SubhanAllah. Whoopsie. Yep. So when you go and throw that shooting from the hip and you throw that fatwa out, and you haven't done a lot of research into Arabic language, into hadith, into this, into that, you have to do a lot of homework. You have to leave every single stone unturned. Once you've done that, give a fatwa. Go ahead. Right? As Imam Shafi says, إذا ما كنت ذا فهم وعلم بما اختلف الأوائل والأواخر فناظر من تناظر بسكون إياك أن تلح ولا تكابر. As Imam Shafi says, when you know every single thing that the early scholars debated and every single thing that the late scholars debated, you can sit down. I say, I give you any text and you can explain it. I bring you Khalil in the Maliki school and you can explain it in detail. I give you the Hidayah, you can explain it in detail. I give you Minhaj al-Talibin, you say this position, da 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 da. You can explain every single thing. You know fiqh, you've done fiqh in all the form of dhahib, and you know in the inside out, back to front. And you can tell me every single thing, what Ibn Abbas said and Ibn Umar said, and this and that, and da 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 da. فَنَاظِرْ مَنْ تُنَاظِرْ بِسُكُونٍ, and then you can debate with whoever you want. And you can express your own opinion, go ahead. But we do it بِسُكُونٍ with gentleness. فَنَاظِرْ مَنْ تُنَاظِرْ بِسُكُونٍ وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تُلِحَّ وَلَا تُكَابِرْ. But don't try and slam people down and say, you're a fool, you don't know the answer. And don't show yourself bigger than them. Right? So this is what Imam Shafi said. But go ahead. Like, start debating with people. Try and defend our point. Express your own opinion. Have an opinion. Because, yeah, you're knowledgeable now. But do you have that? Or is it something that's very, very, very brief? Right? Very, very superficial understanding of fiqh, superficial understanding of the Quran, superficial understanding of hadith, of Arabic, of history, etc. And you're going to find things in random places. This hadith is only found in the Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd, this book on history, like subhanAllah. How am I supposed to read that book? Right? You just chanced upon a really important letter written by Imam Malik to Layth ibn Sa'd. Where did you find that? Oh, in the end of this book, subhanAllah. The information comes up in random places, right? There are textbooks you can study, but really when you start digging and digging and digging, you want to get to the end, right? When you get to the end of knowledge, that's basically impossible. Like when you say, like, I honestly read everything possible and impossible on this issue. That's very difficult to do that. And so expressing an opinion before that is wrong. You should say, قال مالك قال الشافعية قال الحنابلة. Just quote the authorities that exist, and that's it. That's all you need to do. As opposed to my opinion is this, my opinion is this, right? So my job in this class is trying to show you this system. We get exposure. Wow, this is interesting. Systems, right? See how when we were talking about touching private parts, making wudu, you see, oh, they could be right and they could be right. Oh, wow, that's amazing, right? So that we value different opinions and different approaches, right? As opposed to this is the right opinion and they're wrong, right? And I try my best to be the devil's advocate, play a game where it seems like I'm going with one side, but then actually the other side makes more sense, right? Because in reality, that's how it is. Every argument makes a lot of sense because that's why it's been defended for such a long time, right? And so very, very important. So you're fooled by, oh, there's a hadith, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there, done, right? Somebody saying it's haram. The Prophet forbade selling cats, therefore it's haram. And yet their fatwa doesn't confirm with anybody. The Prophet never prayed 20 rakahs tarawih. Why are we praying 20 rakahs? This is stupid. We're going against the sunnah. Stop. And then you realize, whoops, isn't it odd that your conclusion, which says it's not sahih, that the Prophet never prayed four rakahs, prayed tarawih, 20 rakahs tarawih. And then everyone else is saying, no, but you should pray 20 rakahs tarawih. Isn't that odd? Isn't that so strange? Maybe you have yet to research quite a lot, right? Maybe you got to research quite a lot before you start expressing an opinion. And the more you learn, the more humble you become. Just like just like you imagine you conquered the whole world. Sayyid, for example, conquers the whole world. What percent of the if he conquered all of the land of the earth, what percent of the earth has he conquered? He is king of Europe, Asia, America, South America, and Australasia, Africa. What percent of the world is he king of then?
80, 70, 80. No,
Of all the land on planet Earth, what percent of the Earth in total is he king of then?
30%.
30%. There we go. So the more he gets in power and the more he realizes about planet Earth, he's like, wow, I'm even though I'm the king, right? Jahangir, right? I am Jahangir. I'm the king of the world. I've taken the whole world, all of the land. Okay, what about the sea, Habibi? The sea, the oceans, 70% of the world is ocean and sea. So you have 70%, most of it you're not in control of, even if you were the king of the world. Same thing with sacred knowledge. Same thing with sacred knowledge, right? And there's a beautiful story from one of the students of Salman al-Farisi. Right, we'll just stop here, inshallah, with this quote. Is that there was one of the tabi'een, he said, I wanted to learn from Salman al-Farisi. I want to do whatever he says. Okay? And so he said, I'm just going to follow him and do whatever he does, and whatever he tells me to do, I'll do it. So they were traveling towards Iraq, and they were next to the Euphrates, right? This huge river of the Euphrates. And they stopped and they got water for the people to drink, and they got water for the animals to drink. So then Salman al-Farisi asked the man to go back and get more water. And so he had made a promise to himself to do whatever he said. So he did it. So he goes back and gets more water. And then Salman al-Farisi sends him back to get more water. Okay, so he's now gone 3 times. And he just, out of adab, he's just listening to him. So then Salman al-Farisi asks him a question. He says, bro, did you leave any water left? Was there any water left in the Euphrates? Euphrates is like, they call it Bahar in Arabic. It's like a sea. So, I mean, it's a huge river, right? Is there any water left? So he's like, I don't understand the question, Sheikh. Like, of course there's water left. He said, that's what knowledge is. Knowledge is like that. You go and get some, and you get some more, and you get some more, and you get a lot. And what you have left is a ridiculous amount. There's a ridiculous amount that's left. And so Salman al-Farisi told him something very, very important. Salman al-Farisi has a lot of wisdom, right, about priorities. So he said, make sure you learn that which is a priority, because otherwise you're going to go on forever. If you say, I need to learn everything and then I'll come to a conclusion, you're going to have anything. So that's why, that's one of the many reasons why, historically, every single Muslim followed one of the four madahib. Because if you go around, I got to study this and 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 this, so you will spend 300 years before you get to a conclusion. It'll be a nice conclusion. It'll be interesting and it'll be a very beautiful journey. But right now, for example, I am in Brentwood and it is 7:33. When I go to the masjid, it's after Asr. Should I do Tahiyyat al-Masjid? Because the Prophet ﷺ told me that whenever you enter a masjid, pray 2 rakahs before you sit down. Or should I not do Tahiyyat al-Masjid because the Prophet ﷺ forbade me to pray after Asr? I'll take approximately 300 years to find that conclusion. If I just follow the Hanafi school, they'll say, don't do it. And I follow the Shafi school, they say, do it. Thank you very much. I have an answer. Give me a reliable answer, and I'll just roll with it. That's fine. But if you are going to rely on your own opinion forever, it will take you approximately 300 years to get to the conclusion. It'll be a very amazing conclusion. It'll be an amazing journey. It'll be a beautiful journey. But if you don't prioritize the most important things, you will end up doing lots of stupid things on the journey. And so we shouldn't do things like that. We should prioritize, which is be humble, respect ulama, learn fiqh properly, and and so studying fiqh is a priority. Meaning you study fiqh from a teacher of fiqh in a fiqh book. Right? Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.